Don't trust anyone. The price of jealousy and deception in friendship. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to have them betray you when you least expected it? In this tale of friendship, jealousy, and dark magic, you'll witness the true cost of envy and the shocking consequences of deception. Watch now to see how a simple bond turns into a web of lies, and find out if anyone can survive the deadly price of betrayal. Trust no one, not even your best friend. If you're captivated by this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling African tales filled with suspense and drama. And if you haven't already, turn on the notification bell so you're the first to experience all the action in our upcoming videos. Let's get into it. In a lively village by the riverbank, nestled in the heart of the kingdom, lived two inseparable friends, Lamy and Adah. From the day they could walk, they were always seen together, fetching water from the stream, dancing in the village festivals, and whispering secrets under the light of the moon. Their bond was like that of sisters, and the villagers often admired their harmony and beauty. Lamy, known for her sharp wit, could solve any problem with her clever ideas, while Adah, with her ethereal beauty and gentle nature, made everyone around her smile. They were the heart of the village, beloved by all. But as time passed, the winds of change began to blow. Adah's beauty caught the eye of King Obi, a powerful and respected ruler who governed the land. His reputation was known far and wide, and when he first laid eyes on Adah during one of the village's lively festivals, he was captivated. He had seen many beautiful women before, but none with the warmth and grace that Adah carried. It wasn't long before he sought her out and asked for her hand in marriage. Lamy, though outwardly happy for her best friend, could not shake the bitter twist in her heart. Every time she saw Adah in her royal attire, walking hand in hand with the king or laughing with him by the palace's grand fountain, a feeling of envy and resentment grew within her. She had always been the clever one, the one with the ideas, and yet Adah, with her kindness and beauty, had become the queen of the land. At first, Lamy tried to convince herself that her jealousy was nothing more than an understandable reaction to change. After all, Adah was her closest friend. But as the days went by, Lamy could no longer hide the darkness that brewed inside her. It was a thought that crept into her mind one cold night as she lay on her bed staring at the moon. "Why should Adah have everything?" she whispered to herself. The idea came to her like a spark in the dark, a dangerous, thrilling idea. She remembered the stories her grandmother had once told her about a mysterious old woman who lived deep in the forest. A woman with the power to cast spells, grant wishes, for a price. Lamy's heart raced as she realized that if she could remove Adah from the picture, she could take her place as queen. The thought of living in the palace, adored by King Obi, surrounded by riches and power, consumed her. One fateful morning before the sun had risen, Lamy decided to act. With determination in her eyes, she packed a small bag and ventured into the forest. The trees loomed tall, and the air grew heavy as she walked deeper into the wilderness, guided by the whispers of her dark thoughts. The deeper she ventured, the more the sounds of the forest grew ominous. The hoot of owls, the rustle of leaves, and the distant growl of wild animals. But Lamy pressed on, her heart pounding in her chest. After what felt like hours, she finally reached a small, dilapidated hut made of sticks and leaves. Smoke curled from its chimney, and an eerie scent filled the air. Lamy's breath hitched as she approached, her legs shaking. She knew she had to go through with it. The old woman was sitting outside, stirring a pot of strange green liquid. Her long, tangled hair framed her face, and her piercing eyes seemed to look right through Lamy. "What brings you here, child?" the old woman asked, her voice both gentle and sharp, as though she already knew Lamy's heart. Lamy hesitated for a moment, but then, with an unwavering voice, she said, "I want my friend gone. I want to take her place as queen." The old woman raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "That is a dark wish," she said slowly. "Are you ready for the consequences?" Without a moment's hesitation, Lamy nodded. "Yes, I'll do whatever it takes." The old woman smiled, revealing crooked teeth. She reached into the hut and pulled out a small bottle filled with glowing green liquid. "Give this to your friend. It will turn her into something harmless, something no one will ever think of again." "What will it turn her into?" Lamy asked, her voice trembling with excitement. "A fish," the old woman replied. "A golden fish that will live in the river, far from the palace. No one will know who she was." Lamy's hands shook as she took the bottle, her eyes wild with anticipation. She couldn't believe it. She was about to make her greatest wish come true. With a dark smile, she turned and rushed back to the village. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she would do next. In the back of her mind, the old woman's warning echoed, but Lamy didn't care. She had made up her mind. A few days later, when Adah visited her in her humble hut, Lamy seized her opportunity. "I made something special for you," Lamy said, holding out a wooden cup filled with the green liquid. "It's a drink to give you strength and keep you happy." Adah smiled warmly. "Thank you, Lamy. You're such a good friend." Without hesitation, she drank the liquid. The transformation was instant. Adah's body began to shrink, her arms disappeared, and her legs morphed into a long, scaly tail. Before Lamy's eyes, Adah turned into a small golden fish. Lamy picked up the fish and stared at it, her heart racing. "Goodbye, Adah," she whispered as she walked to the riverbank and threw the fish into the water. The river sparkled in the moonlight, but to Lamy, it felt empty. With Adah gone, she had everything she ever wanted. King Obi would forget about her, and she would take her place as queen. The days after Adah's disappearance passed with a tense calm. The palace, once filled with joy and laughter, now echoed with sorrow. King Obi was restless, his nights haunted by vivid dreams of Adah standing by the riverbank. Her face was sad, her voice calling out to him in distress. Each night, as he fell into a troubled sleep, the dreams became more vivid. In the dream, he could hear her calling his name. "Obi, I am here. I need your help." The dreams were so real that King Obi began to believe that they were not merely dreams, but a desperate call from Adah trying to reach him. His concern grew into an obsession. He couldn't focus on his royal duties, and the people began to notice the change in him. Gone was the strong, decisive ruler they had admired. In his place was a man lost in his own sorrow, his mind consumed by the mystery of Adah's disappearance. Meanwhile, Lamy moved about the palace, pretending to offer her help and comfort. Every word she spoke to the grieving king was carefully calculated, a sweet facade to mask her growing anxiety. "My king," she would say softly, "I know you miss Adah, but life must go on. The people need a strong ruler, and I am here to help you." Her words were soothing, but her heart was filled with deceit. Despite her efforts to comfort the king, Obi remained distant, his heart still anchored to the memory of his lost wife. He began to see Lamy only as a loyal friend, nothing more. His eyes, once bright and full of life, had grown dull, and every day seemed to drag on longer than the last. His grief had closed him off, leaving Lamy in the shadows of the palace, watching the king from afar, hoping for his attention. Lamy's jealousy grew with each passing day. She would watch him in the palace gardens, his face lined with sorrow, and she would feel a deep, gnawing frustration. No matter what she did, she couldn't break through to his heart. "Why can't he see me?" she whispered one night, her hands clenched in frustration. "Why does he still think of her?" One night, as she lay in her bed, the same dark thought crept back into her mind. If her kindness and attentiveness couldn't win the king's heart, maybe magic could. She recalled the old woman deep in the forest, the one who had given her the potion to turn Adah into a fish. Perhaps this old woman could help her force the king to love her. The thought consumed her, and the next morning, just before the first light of dawn, Lamy set off again for the forest, her heart beating wildly. As she walked through the dense trees, her mind raced with the possibilities. "This time, I'll get what I deserve," she whispered to herself. "This time, I will be the queen." When she arrived at the old woman's hut, she was ready to do whatever it took. The woman, still sitting outside as she had before, looked up at her with a knowing gaze. "Back so soon, child?" the old woman asked. "I warned you that your first wish would bring trouble." "I don't care," Lamy snapped. "I want the king to love me. I want him to forget about Adah and make me his queen." The old woman sighed deeply, her expression unreadable. "Love cannot be forced, child, not without a price." Lamy's eyes narrowed. "I'll pay any price," she said, her voice firm with determination. "I want him. I want to be queen." The old woman's lips twisted into a dark smile, her eyes glittering with something sinister. "Very well," she said, her voice low and rasping. "You will get what you want, but there is a cost. You will never bear children, and your womb will belong to me." Lamy's breath caught in her throat. The price was steep, but she didn't care. She had already given up her soul for this power, so why not sacrifice a small part of herself? "I agree," she said, her voice trembling with both fear and excitement. The old woman nodded and began mixing strange powders and herbs. "Take this charm," she said, handing Lamy a vial filled with red liquid. "Cook a meal for the king, and when he eats it, his heart will belong to you forever." Lamy's heart raced with anticipation as she took the vial. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the charm tightly. She didn't even question the cost anymore. The power, the riches, the throne, it was all within her grasp. The next day, Lamy went to the palace kitchen and prepared a grand feast for the king. She cooked his favorite dish with a careful hand, making sure every detail was perfect. When the meal was ready, she added the red liquid to the stew, the final touch that would ensure the king's heart was hers. As King Obi sat down to eat, Lamy served him with a soft smile. "This is for you, my king," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I hope it brings you peace." Obi ate without hesitation, the stew filling his stomach as he sighed in contentment. But as the meal ended, something strange began to happen. His eyes softened, his gaze lingered on Lamy, and for the first time in months, he smiled at her. "Lamy," he said, his voice warm. "I never realized how much I appreciate you. You've been by my side through everything." Lamy's heart soared as she looked into his eyes, the spell taking hold. "I'll always be here for you," she said, masking her triumph with a modest smile. Within days, King Obi announced that he would marry Lamy. The villagers were shocked, whispers spreading through the streets. How could the king marry Adah's best friend so soon after her disappearance? The palace was in an uproar, but no one dared question the king's decision. Lamy, now queen, walked through the palace with her head held high, draped in the finest jewels and robes. She was finally the queen she had always dreamed of becoming. But even as she basked in her newfound power, a dark shadow loomed over her heart. She had everything she wanted: riches, power, and the king's love. Yet, the feeling of unease gnawed at her. Something felt wrong, like she was being watched. But she pushed the thought away, knowing that nothing could take away her victory. As Lamy settled into her new role as queen, the palace was filled with a false sense of tranquility. The servants scurried around, the courtiers whispered in the halls, and the people of the village, though wary, saw no way of stopping the change in power. King Obi was no longer the strong ruler they had once known. His eyes had lost their sharpness, and his decisions, now guided by Lamy, seemed to lack conviction. Yet, Lamy found herself increasingly uncomfortable in her new position. Despite her newfound wealth and status, an eerie feeling began to creep into her heart. She had everything she ever wanted, but something was missing. The golden fish, now swimming in its bowl, became a constant reminder of the price she had paid. The king's love felt empty, as if it were a shadow of what true love should be. It wasn't long before the whispers started in the village. People began to talk about the sudden disappearance of Adah, and rumors of Lamy's dark actions began to spread. One by one, the villagers spoke of the cruelty with which Lamy treated Adah's parents. They were forced to work in the palace, humiliated and broken, all because their daughter had been replaced by the cold, manipulative woman who now sat on the throne. Meanwhile, Na and her daughter Katsi had not forgotten Adah. The pain of losing her friend haunted Katsi, and she couldn't bear the thought of her mother selling the golden fish, which was, in her heart, more than just an animal. Katsi knew something wasn't right. That night, as she sat by the fish's bowl, she whispered softly, "If you're not just a fish, give me a sign." For a moment, nothing happened, but then, to Katsi's shock, the water rippled, and the fish seemed to swim toward the surface, its shimmering golden scales glowing faintly. A voice, soft yet clear, whispered through the air, "Help me, I am Adah. I was cursed and turned into a fish by someone I trusted. Please don't let your mother sell me. I need help to become human again." The realization struck Katsi like a thunderclap. This fish, the one her mother had planned to sell for riches, was Adah. The friend she had lost to Lamy's treachery was still alive, trapped in this form. Katsi's mind raced as she tried to understand what had happened. She had heard of the old woman in the forest who could grant wishes with a price, but she had never believed the stories. Now, the impossible had become real. She had to save Adah, and she needed her mother's help. The next morning, Na was preparing for her trip to the market to sell the fish. Katsi, with tears in her eyes, tried to explain what had happened. "Mama, this fish isn't just a fish, it's Adah. She's been turned into a fish by Lamy's dark magic. We can't sell her. We have to help her." Na's face turned pale with disbelief. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's just a fish. You're being foolish." But Katsi refused to let go of the truth. She knew the fish could not be sold, not to save them from their poverty, not for any amount of wealth. "Please, Mama, you have to trust me. This is more than just a fish. We have to save her." Reluctantly agreed, and the two of them took the golden fish back to the old woman in the forest. The journey was long, the path treacherous, but they were determined. When they arrived, the old woman greeted them with a knowing smile. "I see you have changed your mind," she said, her voice soft but knowing. "I warned you, child, that this path would not be easy." The old woman gave them a bundle of rare herbs and instructed them to rub the herbs on the fish, which would begin to transform. But she also gave them a warning. "There is one last thing you must do. The king must see her within 7 days. If he does not lay eyes on her before then, the curse will be permanent, and Adah will remain a fish forever." With the herbs in hand and a heart full of hope, Na and Katsi set out again, determined to reach the palace and save their friend. The days that followed were fraught with danger. They had to move quickly, avoiding the guards who searched for them in every corner of the kingdom. When they finally arrived at the palace, they were stopped at the gates by the royal guards. They knew they would be turned away unless they could convince the guards that their message was important enough for the king. Inside the palace, Lamy was lounging on her golden throne, enjoying her newfound power. The king, still under her spell, sat beside her, looking weary and distant. Lamy had become more tyrannical with each passing day, and her reign was filled with cruelty. The villagers spoke of her like a tyrant, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop her. When the guards brought Na and Katsi to the palace, Lamy was immediately suspicious. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice sharp and filled with disdain. "You dare to come here and demand to see the king?" But Nah stood her ground. "We bring news of great importance, Your Majesty. We must speak with the king." Her words were met with resistance, but Nah remained calm. She knew this was their only chance. "If you refuse us, the kingdom will suffer," she said, her voice steady. "Please, we need to help the king." Reluctantly, Lamy allowed them to speak with the king. Nah handed the golden fish to the king, and as soon as his eyes locked onto it, a strange energy filled the room. The fish began to glow, and in a flash of light, Adah emerged from the fish's form. She stood before the king, restored to her human self. King Obi looked at Adah in disbelief. The spell was broken. The warmth of the king's love for Adah returned, and he embraced her tightly, apologizing for his blindness. "I am so sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I was under her spell. I failed you, my queen." Adah looked up at him, her heart filled with relief, but she also felt the weight of the past. "I forgive you," she said softly. "We will rebuild what was lost." The kingdom celebrated the return of Adah, and Lamy's reign came to an end. The queen, once powerful, was now nothing more than a broken woman. She fled into the forest, knowing that her time had come to an end. Her power had crumbled, and the kingdom had seen through her lies. As for Nah and Katsi, they were honored for their bravery. The king offered them a new home and a place of comfort in the palace. They had saved Adah, and in doing so saved the entire kingdom. The story of Adah's return spread throughout the land, a tale of magic, betrayal, and the power of love. Lamy's evil was vanquished, and peace returned to the kingdom once more. In the end, the villagers learned a valuable lesson. Do not let jealousy or greed cloud your heart. True power lies in love, not in magic or riches. If you loved this story and want to hear more thrilling African folktales, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join our community of storytelling lovers and never miss an epic twist, drama, and valuable life lesson.